This video I'm going to discuss the concept of ableism, and again, everyone's experience is unique with regards to it, but for me, the biggest way that it manifests itself is in the construct of getting to different things. In terms of transportation. People tend, and it's an assumption and a set of assumptions. One is that I get the assumption set often of that people know more about what my ability set versus disability set are just by looking at me. And I've gotten this definitely by a bunch of people who are fully able-bodied, and they just assume, they say, up cane, or up joint braces, can't lift anything, can't stand up, can't walk very well. I get up and down slowly, especially standing up, and when I start out walking, it's generally not quick at first, but once I get going, I'm double the speed of the average person that's walking around the 5 boroughs, which is to say, whenever I have the Google Maps help me get around, because one of the things I haven't been able to find a good set of paper maps, which is to say plasticized paper maps of the area. So it always says, such and such amount of time to walk from A to B for a given distance. I always do it in about half the time. Sometimes less. So, in terms of flat distance walking, not talking about climbing stairs or actually getting up or down to different places, because that takes me longer than average. But in terms of actually flat or relatively flat walking, I'm faster, because my legs are so strong. They have to be. The muscles, in essence, have compensated for the constant dislocations and subluxations, and therefore the muscles are actually built up more. It's almost like I lift weights, except I don't. I walk more than average, and I also walk faster than average once I get started in terms of really to move. And because of that thing, it's always harder for me to get to or from different locations at a base point level, especially with how horrible our infrastructure is in terms of how horrible the sidewalks are, the mess that the roads are in, elevators and escalators, most part non-existent, and when they do exist, they're only somewhat functional, the paths aren't wide enough. It really is an absolute mess. I know for many people they say, oh, well, it's just annoying, I know it's annoying, and I know potholes that wear down our cars a bit more and all that, but they don't really get it. They really don't. How many times I've tripped on different pieces of uneven sidewalk. How many times, again, most of the time I catch myself and I don't actually fall completely to the ground. But every time that happens, I dislocate at least one or two of my joints. Every single time. Okay? Could be, one of my hips, could be one of my knees, could be one of my, shoulders or elbows in terms of how I happen to catch myself that particular time, but it always happens. And, for the most part, it's generally rather mild, okay, in terms of it doesn't cause a huge amount of pain. In part because I'm so freaking used to it, though. That's part of it. But it still means that I have to work a lot harder. And I have to go through a whole lot more effort, a whole lot more pain, whole lot more drudgery, a lot than people who are able-bodied, people who are not disabled. Weather conditions, bad weather, again, it'll affect me more. Especially because one of my issues is a balance problem. Another issue is asthma. Primary diagnosis is Ehlers-Danlos joint hypermobility. So with this couple of smile things thrown in the middle there, and Raynaud's, I have an interesting setup that I push through. Before my husband and I became homeless, I went to school part-time. I had a part-time job, and I managed to get around the public transit system in that area, which was so bad that so many lawsuits were pushed that finally the bus operator, I'm not sure if they were officially shut down, but at the very least they were sued out of their contract because so many people died as a result of their mismanagement in terms of how badly the buses ran. When the buses are only scheduled to run roughly once an hour, and they end up skipping 2 or 3 runs in a row, and there's no heat in the bus shelters, so you end up waiting 2.5, 3 hours in either 5-degree cold, 5 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, or 95 or 98 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? That's when things can get quite deadly, especially because in my part of the country, it's really humid. So it's a humid heat in terms of the 98, and therefore, at times, the heat index got up to 110, 120 degrees, and me and many other people were standing out there for 2, 3, sometimes up to 4 hours waiting for a bus. Thankfully, I'm more heat tolerant than I am cold tolerant. The cold times, I'm thankful that it was rarer during the colder times. At times, at least then, I would try and walk around. I use every trick in the book, and I narrowly avoided official frostbite many times. And also, when I could, what I did was during the colder days, I would either spring for a cab, which cost me, in essence, half my day's pay because of how expensive cabs were in the area, but or depending upon where I was going, sometimes it cost me the entire day's pay. But I preferred to, actually it was just half a day's, but still, half a day's paycheck just to get home safely seems, I think many people could understand, rather insane. But I did it, because safety first. And then, So, when it comes to the concept of the assumption of, because again, I'm one of those, and many people are like me, where the disability doesn't really show up too much. I don't always wear full-on hand and wrist braces, as you can see right now. I'm wearing just one of them, and many times, especially when I'm at my apartment, I just keep off my hand ones. But my ankle ones, they hide underneath my clothing, underneath my shoes. So most of the time, people can't even see that I'm wearing them. My knee ones, again, when I wear them, they hide under my clothes. At times I wear them as well on my elbows, and I wear some elastic in terms of something to brace up my hips at times as well. And again, it all, for the most part, except my hands, it hides under my clothing, especially during the winter months and fall. My cane doesn't, but I don't heavily rely on my cane all that, every time I go out, especially, on my best days. Again, I'd say there are 5 or maybe tops 10 days a year where I don't really even need the cane, okay? Either my 4-footed or my basically walking stick of a single-footed cane. But again, we're talking about, tops 10 days a year. There's generally, in this particular climate, and this is one of the reasons that I'm moving to a better one, at least 30 to 40 days a year where it's about all I could do to get to and from my bedroom to my bathroom and maybe the kitchen. And I have a relatively small apartment. At times I half crawl, half stumble my way around in terms of that area, which, again, we're talking about under 50 feet in terms of movement. But it's, again, on my bad days, that's what I struggle to do. And that's why, for the, clueless out there, disabled does not mean wheelchair only. Not to say that people in wheelchairs don't have disabling medical conditions. They do. And by the way, not everyone that needs or is in a wheelchair can't walk at all. Okay? It's not just for paralysis. Unfortunately, one day I might, have use for that myself. I hope not. I hope never. But who knows? Depending upon how much my spine degrades through the years, it might become a real necessity. For now, most of the time, I don't need all that many precautions and I'm okay. But again, there's some times when I'm trying to come back from something, and this happened a couple of days ago, actually, Monday, where we were so long in transit that my back really went out. When I say my back went out, I mean like it locked up, and therefore I couldn't feel my legs or my arms completely. And therefore, when that happens, it's like I could feel a little bit of pressure in terms of my feet, but not much. And therefore, I have to look to make sure that I am indeed, I have to look ahead of me and look at my feet to see what the heck they're doing, because otherwise I can't feel really what they're doing. I actually can walk around like that. It's not really safe because, again, we don't really know what they're doing. And especially, this is where the infrastructure comes into play in terms of sidewalks, curb cuts, and potholes. If you can't feel your feet completely, then you can't really maneuver them properly around or over uneven surfaces. You can't control the concept of trying to avoid slipping or tripping. It's just not possible. You could try to catch yourself afterwards. You can, and this is what I generally do, I slow things down as much as possible so that other forces and, my working with my cane, I can get it together. And there is muscle control, but it's just everything is tremendously delayed. So, again, folks, I need you to consider the concept that different abilities exist, because there's plenty of things I can do, but there's also some things that I just can't. Shalom.